In this video, I'm going to talk about position papers. You should make sure that at every conference you know when the position papers are due. And the thing about position papers is that they are in many ways very, very difficult to write because generally speaking, depending on how you learn to write and how you've written in your other classes, position papers are like nothing you've ever done before. Right? Everything you learned in high school about writing, you have to throw that out the door in position papers. Position papers are more like a legal document than anything else. In the same way that resolution writing, which we'll talk about in another video, is a different way of writing, position papers are a different way of writing. Now, what you're supposed to do, essentially, position papers are very, very short, very brief summaries of the position of your country or your character in a conference. Now, if you know your topic extremely well, if you studied hard, if you figured out what proposals you plan to bring to the committee when you participate, writing a position paper is relatively easy, right? Still, the writing style is different, but you know what you're going to do. Then the challenge is going ahead and just doing it, right? So here's the thing to think about when you're writing position papers. There should be absolutely no fluff in a position paper. What do I mean by fluff? You're not trying to write anything that sounds flowing and beautiful. You're not trying to write anything that's going to be compelling to the reader with grand prose and lovely imagery or dark imagery or anything like that. Think of it like a legal document. What you're basically doing is trying to summarize for the chair of your committee the position of your country or your character. That's the goal of a position paper. And depending on the size of your committee, your chair or whoever is going to be reading the position papers has many, many position papers to read. Right? They have many position papers to read. And so you've got to go ahead and make sure that you get right to the point. Every single sentence in a position paper should be there for a reason. It should accomplish something. So what I want you to do is open up the Lawman position paper format. Now for our conference, this time at UC Berkeley, they don't have a specific format. What they say is you should look in your committee guide to go ahead and see whether or not there's any specifications, but otherwise you can use whatever format you want. Since we're going to be doing position papers, or some of us are potentially going to be doing position papers at Lawman, if you have the option of using any format, let's use the Lawman format so that we have practice doing it. Now also, keep in mind that position papers are due, I believe it's on March 2nd. Like they have to be submitted by then. But you should also keep in mind that these position papers are going to be read and reread and revised and reread and revised. And so you can't plan on going ahead and finishing it on March 2nd. You have to plan on finishing it really soon, and give us a week at least ahead of time to go ahead and revise it, send it back to you. You can make some changes. Let us look at it again. It's going to be a painstaking process, which means you have to be doing a ton of research now. So in the Lawman position paper format, they give you a breakdown of points, right? Don't worry about the points. But understand that this is the value that's placed on position papers, right? So I don't know if they do a point schedule at Berkeley. It's irrelevant. But use that as a guideline. So if you look at the Lawman position paper format, one of the things that it points out is the first thing that your position paper should do is go ahead and give the historical background and cause of whatever problem you're dealing with. Right? Now think about this. You could be dealing with a question as big as the empowerment of women and empowering women to go ahead and assist in development. Now, if you're talking about the historical background and causes of that, you can write a book on that. But what you have to do is you have to figure out a way to go ahead and summarize it in a sentence or in two sentences because you don't have much time. because you're also going to have to include in there what nations are directly involved or affected by the issue. Is it poorer countries? Is there a north-south split, right? If you're writing about something that has to do with climate change, or is it the low-level countries, island countries that are more affected? But again, you've got to summarize it, right? And then what effect does this problem have on the international community? Now that, if you think about it, that is a huge discussion all by itself. But I believe that they said the Berkeley position papers should be no more than 2 pages, right? That's just the first part of your position paper. The second part of it is, what's the UN's involvement, right? How is the UN involved? How did it originally become involved? What actions were taken by the UN on this issue? You should be citing resolutions. You should be citing conferences and conventions, things like that, and you should be citing them. But you don't have to elaborate on them. You don't have to explain them. You can say something as simple as, the United Nations expressed concern about this issue in resolutions this, and then this, and then this, and list the resolutions. You don't have to go about in elaborate details. Not even you don't have to go about it. You don't have time to, right? And then you also talk about what other organs, what other UN-affiliated organs, NGOs, or UN-affiliated groups are involved in this situation, summarizing it. Right? Each of these things can be 1 sentence if you can get it down to that. Once you've done that, you have still only done half of the position paper, right? And you haven't done the most important part, because the most important part is going to be about your country. What's your country's involvement, if any, in the topic? And most importantly, what's your nation's position and policy on the topic, and maybe opinion about the UN's actions in regards to the topic? And then probably most importantly, it's in the paper, in the guide, it says your nation's past actions regarding the topic, voting records, resolutions sponsored, conferences attended. Again, that can all be 1 sentence. That can all just be 1 sentence where you go ahead, if you're representing Madagascar. Madagascar has been a signatory of and you list off the resolutions. The last part, the very last thing, is the absolute most important part. Your nation's proposals and plans to deal with the issue. That is the key to a position paper. What do you plan to do about it? I mean, if I were assessing the points in a position paper, that would be the key. But once again, you can't explain fully the depth of your plan. So you have to be able to summarize your plan in a sentence or 2. And usually for every issue that you're dealing with, you're going to go ahead and you're going to have more than 1 plan, right? You don't want to walk into a conference with just 1 proposal for how to address it. If it's a big issue, you might have a proposal dealing with education. There might be an environmental part of it. There may be a private sector involvement in it. It may have to do with technological issues and the diffusion of technology. There could be a bunch of different issues depending on what you're talking about. You've got to summarize everything. So back to what I said originally, everything you learned in high school was wrong about writing, whereas you're supposed to sort of expand on everything when you're writing, and be very creative. Here, it's just get down to the basics. It's going to be boring. It's going to be a boring document. But it's going to be packed full of information. And that's what you need to do when you're writing a position paper. Because again, there's more than 1 topic on you. For most of you, there's more than 1 topic that you're going to be dealing with. So that's just addressing 1 topic. Then you've got to address the other topic. So if you're dealing with 2 topics, basically you have a page for each one. Every sentence has to matter. Now, in terms of the format, they on the Lawman Guide, they have the logistics and the basics for how you're actually supposed to set it up, right? Paragraph form, 1 page per topic, all that. That's what you'll go ahead and do. Font size, 11 is the minimum, right? And you may want to do that because you're trying to get as much information on there as possible. So, position papers are difficult. But here's the thing. If you've thought through your proposals ahead of time, if you've gone ahead and you've considered what your proposals are going to be, it's all about boiling it down to the most basic. Now, don't worry about whether or not your position paper fully explains your ideas. That's not the goal. The goal isn't to go ahead and do it. The goal is to clearly sort of articulate in sort of general terms what your position is, what your position of your country is, and what your proposals are, and your understanding of the topic. That's the way a position paper is supposed to go. So the delegates who go ahead and have a greater understanding of the background of the historical background of the issue, and can summarize it very succinctly. The delegates who can go ahead and identify which countries are involved very succinctly, and the effect of this topic on the international community very succinctly, are the ones who are going to do well. The ones who understand what the UN has already done on the issue and can summarize it, again, very succinctly, identifying major resolutions, conferences, things that have been done in the past, and even if they've alleviated the issue, if you can do that succinctly, you're going to be in good shape. If you can identify other actors who've been involved, and it doesn't have to just be UN actors, if regional organizations have been involved, if other IGOs, other international governmental organizations have been involved, you can include that as well. And then the last part, the most important part, what your country is going to do about it. If you can put all that together and you can summarize it in one page, that's going to be packed full of information. If it's done clearly, if it's done without a lot of wasted space and wasted energy, you're in great shape. Okay, you're in great shape. But again, you have to go ahead and provide these to me and to the other veterans to go ahead and read them over, because you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 summaries. Revisions. So you've got to start thinking about your topic, coming up with proposals now, right? Researching it now, thinking about what your country is in favor of and what your country isn't in favor of, what proposals your country supports, what it doesn't support. You have to do all that now, and then be thinking in terms of breaking it down into the most basic form. I'll be uploading some sample papers, some sample position papers for you to look at to get an idea of what a position paper should look like. You can actually go online and Google sample position papers, Model UN, and you'll be able to find them as well. Okay? So position papers, extremely important, and we need to start getting on it now.